When I asked the class how many of them have diabetes or know someone affected by diabetes, about 50% of the class answered that they did or know someone who has diabetes. When compared to the total adult population of the US, ages 20 to 79, about 10% of the population has diabetes. While these percentages seem disproportionate, when you look at the actual number, things seem to make much more sense. In the US, about 31 million adults have diabetes. However, one of the biggest problems with diabetes is this. I myself know many affected by diabetes, them being my family. Almost everyone on my father's side has diabetes, and an uncle on my mother's side has diabetes as well. Something I always hear from them is just how much the cost of insulin is. At times, my uncle has told me for his regular month supply, it has cost him over $200. The cost of insulin in the US is too expensive, and there should be a limit on how much it should cost. Insulin is a life-saving drug for the people who need it. Diabetes, or its full name, diabetes mellitus, is a chronic condition in which the body's blood sugar level is at a deadly high level because it cannot produce enough of the hormone insulin or effectively use it. Insulin is a drug that these people need or they'll die without. Back in the 1920s, when insulin was first discovered, the intention of the drug was to save lives, not to make a profit. However, in more recent times in the US, the price of insulin has been skyrocketing. For example, Hemoglog, a certain type of insulin, when first released in 1996, costed $20 per vial. But now, in 2019, it costs $137, which it before costed $275. But they reduced the price by 50% in 2019 for it to be cheaper. Real cheap, huh? Hemoglog patients typically use about 2 vials a month. While having to pay less is always a good thing, this is still too expensive. There are two reasons as to why insulin is so expensive. They are that there are only 3 main companies that produce insulin, and because the US is free market for pharmaceuticals. Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, and Sanofi Aventis are the main companies that produce not just the US supply of insulin, but the world supply of insulin. The insulin market is a billion-dollar industry, and yet there's so little competition. But compared to many other nations, the US pays much more for the insulin. In a report funded by the US Department of Health and Human Services, it found that the US prices for all insulin types combined costed at least 5 times more compared to many other nations in 2018. The major difference between the US and most other nations is that the US has a free market for pharmaceuticals. In this system, there are pharmacy and therapeutic committees that determine which drugs are covered, and pharmacy benefit managers and group purchasing organizations which determine which manufacturers can supply to which hospitals and pharmacy chains. All this is done in secret from the public, allowing for the control of prices. While I think the US doesn't need to completely get rid of its free market system for pharmaceuticals, things need to change. I propose the government should limit the amount of the cost of insulin. The government should make it public knowledge on how the cost of each insulin drug is manufactured. For example, as in how much it costs to produce. The limit of the cost of the drug will be based on that. If the cost of the drug exceeds the limit, the government will ban the sale of the drug, incentivizing the manufacturers to heed the limit, unless they want to lose on one of their biggest markets for insulin. This is in fact something that is already somewhat being done. Some seniors who have Medicare have access to insulin at a maximum of $35 copay for a month's supply. This is how it should be done for everybody. While insulin is widely when insulin was first released, it was widely available. However, in recent times, the cost of insulin has been increasing because of a lack of competition in the U.S.'s free market because of the U.S.'s free market for pharmaceuticals. Does insulin really need to cost so much in the U.S.? Paul Grant, a father who has a son with diabetes, would testify in front of Congress about the increasing cost of insulin. He discussed how, at first, for a 90-day supply of Humalog, it would cost him $300. But when he would try to get a refill for the same amount, it would cost him more than $900. He would end up going to a Canadian pharmacy and paying only $295. That is with a $50 shipping fee. Why is there such a difference in prices for a drug needed so his son can live? I'll tell you why. It's because it can be, and that makes money. I want to thank you all for your time in listening to this very concerning topic.